Hi guys, Ted Elsner, Sacramento Historical Fencing Academy. Today I want to talk to you about a question that I feel everybody should answer sooner or later, and that is when you're going to approach historical fencing, should you come at it from a rules-based standpoint or from a technique-based standpoint? Now, this to me is an especially interesting question as a Meyerite, the term I prefer versus Meyerist. The reason being that, like so many of you, I was introduced to Meyer through his 1570 work, which is phenomenal, right? It's a giant work, 3 different swords listed, dagger, grappling, 3 different staff and weapons, plus then just little bits and pieces throughout. It's a great system, and it's very technique focused, right? Throughout it, while Meyer does list a couple of rules that he wants you to follow, he also spends a lot of time outlining various techniques and the situations in which you're going to use them. And I think especially as a teaching tool for somebody completely new, this is by far the best method for getting someone up and running, right? It'll start to teach you basic motions. It'll give you an idea of how things might have looked. Certainly gives you a little bit to get going really, really quickly. And actually, in the case of Meyer, quite a large amount. But also, after you've spent a bit of time with that, you start to run into questions of why. Why do I do this one thing? Why do the other? They seem very, very similar. Now, in a previous video, I've talked about how there can be, a need for more than one technique for a given situation so that you have options, right? And if you haven't watched it, go back. I'll put the link in the description below. Watch it. Maybe while you're at it, hit the like button, subscribe to us, comment, follow us on Facebook. You know the drill. But in that video, right, I did say that you need, more than one situation. So then you start to look at Meyer and you start to go, well, okay, well, what are these things that lead to that? And it can be hard to figure these out when you look through the book. It's so big, it's so dense, there's a lot of stuff available to it. Conveniently, though, Meyer also was working on the Rostock at the time of his death. It's a manuscript that is pretty much a notebook, frankly. It's got material in it that appears to be his own unique work. It's got work from other unknown authors. It has copies of parts of the RDL glosses in it, and as well as some anonymous stuff that we don't know, where particular techniques come from and plays. But in it, notably, there are 2 sets of rules. There's one set of rules at the beginning of it that I'm going to refer to as the rules of the diagram because they reference a very particular diagram, this one right here, that in Sacramento we've been spending a lot of time on, and I'm going to come back to it in future videos. The other set of rules are ones that are definitely attributed to Meyer, and they kind of bring things back together. Taken as a whole, these 2 sets of rules, as we call them the rules of the Rostock, start to answer the whys of Meyer's system. They really do a good job of explaining to us, why we're going to do a particular thing in a particular place. And what really becomes fascinating from a rules-based standpoint is that you'll start to see the techniques arise from them just kind of implicitly, right? I'm told to do this explicit rule, and then this thing arises from it. And that's really, really fascinating, to me, at least. The downside of it, though, is that if you attempted to approach the rules without having any background in any kind of historical fencing, they really don't tell you a lot. I mean, for instance, the first rule that we know is specifically Meyer's is he tells us to, don't lose control of your weapon. Make sure that you have good control of it. Well, thanks, man. That's really, really useful. I appreciate that you told me not to lose control of my weapon. Right, so he tells us don't lose control of our weapon. Yeah, no kidding. But, with time we've realized that by looking both at what he's written but also the images that appear in his work, that there's a very systematic method going on there, and it's really about using your body to control the weapon as opposed to your arms. Now, some of the other rules are a bit more useful, right? He tells us things like, for instance, make yourself secure with parrying before you attempt to attack the person's body. That's a really useful thing. Even if you don't know techniques, knowing that Meyer wants you to gain a parry and make yourself secure before you actually try and directly attack really fundamentally changes the way that we look at the system. A lot of the stuff that I post here on YouTube and on Facebook and elsewhere relies heavily on these rules of the Rostock, right? I've said in a previous video that people disagreed with that Meyer wants you to provoke or he wants you to take in his first actions, right? He doesn't want you to attack directly. And then people say, well, yeah, but it says in the 1570 that there's 3 types of hits, provoker, taker, hitter, and they can go in any various orders, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, that's true. But when you look at what Meyer shows you and then you look at his rules, he is showing you provocations or taking as his primary thing. He doesn't really have a lot of plays where he's realistically striking straight to the person. Now, a provocation that the person doesn't respond to may turn into a hitter, and he notes that explicitly, but that's not its intended role. That's just a, kind of secondary effect of it. A situation, though, where maybe you do use a hitter first is the person steps into range without a good guard and no threat coming at you that you need to respond to, then yeah, hit. Absolutely. That's a perfect time that you might hit first and then take their after blow that comes afterwards, and then you don't even need to use a provoker at that point if your strike has done well. But these rules really kind of set up an understanding of how we approach the entire thing. So what I'm going to be doing over the next few videos is I'm going to go through the rules of Meyer's system and the way that we approach them in Sacramento. We have a particular order that we approach them in that basically starts with us training ourselves and slowly works out to include our opponent. And that way we always fall back to previous rules if a situation calls for it. Hopefully you'll enjoy those videos, guys. They may come up as the main video of the day. They might appear as a second video. Depends on, how many other things I want to talk about in a given point. But as always, if you have questions, comments, concerns, criticisms, witty remarks, throw them on down there in the comments. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Follow us on Facebook, guys. And, stay safe. Get out there. Get as much training in as you can in this time of isolation so that when you can get back to fence with your friends, you're feeling good and you're ready to go. We'll see you there.